Welcome to So and So, brought to you by Bernina, made to create. I'm Meg Goodman, and you're about to enjoy a casual conversation with a special member of the sewist and quilting community. A conversation about how they got started, what inspires them, what excites them, and their connection to this community. Our guest today is Leah Pitkin, owner and designer at Vintage Little Lady Sewing Patterns. Leah began her sewing in the 5th grade when she made her first piece, a rainbow windsock. Her grandmother was instrumental in teaching her how to sew, as she taught her all the generic stitches, how to sew buttons, and how to design and hand sew wardrobes for her sister and friends. With a passion for photography, she combined this talent with her sewing, in that she does all the model photography for her creations. A hairdresser for 10 years, Leah also prepares her models for each shoot. With a vision of bringing back the delicate, memorable designs of the past, she began designing patterns for violet field threads. But soon, knowing that she needed to fulfill the dream of owning her own pattern company, she founded Vintage Little Lady. A lifelong Texan, Leah lives in Mont Belvieu, Texas, with her husband and 2 beautiful girls. Leah, welcome to So and So.
Hi, Meg. So good to hear you again.
It's great to have you here. When you and I were preparing for this conversation, you shared some really interesting things with me that we'll be talking about throughout the duration of our conversation. But I want to jump right in and talk about the fact that you started sewing at an early age, and it became a passion for you really quickly. So tell us how this all started and take us on your sewing journey.
Yes, it did. I was very young. I was probably about 5th grade age. And even prior to that, I was always doing things with my hands. I was always building stuff or messing with somebody's hair or just anything creative, crafts. But I always had that deep passion for clothing. I could never have enough clothes ever. Just wasn't
Mhm.
possible. The designs, the detail elements, I'm such a detail person. I just love all those things and putting them together, and my mom saw that at an early age, and, my grandma as well, and she's my grandma kinda started off with me and pulling me in by hand sewing some buttons just to poke at my interest, and she had gotten with my mom and told my mom, "You need to get her sewing lessons. She really is intrigued by doing these things with her hands and creating, and I think she would really love sewing." So my mom said, "Okay, I'll look around." And she did. She found a place close to us that was called the Pincushion, which is no longer here now. But I started there. I was about 5th grade, and my mom put me in some summer classes there. And the first thing we created was a windsock, which we used to call the ding dong windsocks because they were they had the color blocking and they were kind of shaped like a cone. And so that was our first thing that we did in that class. And just after the first pass of a stitch on a machine, then my love grew for machines as well. And I had so much fun in that class. I think we ended with a little pair of summer shorts, and it was about a week long, and I went home and raged to my mom and was like, "Please, can you put me in another sewing class?" And she was like, I'll look and see what we can find," because it was only like a little summer thing for children. But unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of businesses that were sewing companies that did classes like that for children. So
Mhm.
I begged and begged and begged her, and she wasn't able to find me another one. So then I took it up at my grandmother's, and my grandmother was like, "You know what? I've got a machine. I like to sew every once in a while. I'll teach you how to sew on my stuff." So I was just elated. I was so excited that I was going to be, and just the dream of being able to make the clothes that I like to see and that in my head that I can put together and making them a reality was just so exciting for me. So anyways, my grandmother, she took me in, took her to a sewing machine. I'd already learned the basic stitches and how to gather ruffles and stuff at that point from the sewing class that I had taken over that summer. And I was there and she was showing me some things. I was digging through all her sewing stuff and I found patterns, paper patterns, of course, probably some McCall's and Simplicity at the time. And
Sure.
of course, I opened them up and I was just like, oh my gosh, what do I even do? Where do I even start? No, I've already got this planned out in my head. I can do this. I can do this myself. This is not the design that I want to sew up. And I'm looking at all these. Of course, I was fifth grade at the time. I'm looking at all these written instructions and this tissue paper. And I'm like, oh no, let me figure this out on my own. So anyways, I went to rummaging through my grandpa's space in his room where he did all his work in his office, had his printer set up, and they were older, so it was more like, "Don't get in my stuff." That's my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, I went straight for the computer paper, and I discreetly though, whenever he would go outside and do his thing, I discreetly went back there and got sewing paper. Of course, my grandmother didn't care. She would just say, "Don't tell your grandpa. I told you you could have that." So I'd go get the computer paper and I laid the 8x11 sheet side by side out, taped them all together, and made like this big, huge computer paper canvas. And all I wanted was just a simple A-line dress. I loved the fitted look, the the details of the silhouette, and I knew that I could handle that at that age and putting that on paper. So I did. I sat down and I carefully drew that silhouette. Of course, it wasn't on the fold or anything. It was just a flat lay of the full front dress, all one piece. My sister and her friend, and was also one of my friends at the time, that lived in my grandma's neighborhood, she was over, and I'm like, "I'm gonna make all y'all some dresses."
Big
And they're
plans.
looking at me like, yeah, you
Yeah,
you
sure.
you do that. You make us some dress. We'll see how that turns out." So
Uh-huh.
I did though. I made 3 of those dresses and I sat there and I hand sewed every single one of those dresses down the side seams, not knowing anything about ease, no nothing. I just winged it. Just winged the whole thing.
Uh-huh.
And of course, we look like a bunch of little minions with our hands down by our side, waddling out the door in these dresses because they were
Sure.
so tight. And so my friend, she had a trampoline down the street, and we're like, you know what? We're going to go test these bad dresses out. We're going to go jump on this trampoline in these dresses, see how they hold up.
No,
Although we had to waddle like
no.
minions to the
Uh-huh.
trampoline, we get on there, take one jump and a toe touch, and them suckers split all the way down the side, all of us. But it was so much fun, though. We loved it. And I think they were more amazed that I even created something that looked like a dress and it went on. My friend and my sister was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you did this." And ever since then, it has just been game on. And I had a mission and a goal of designing clothing ever since I was little. And here we are now.
Fifth graders don't usually have that kind of focus. So
No.
you
No, they don't.
No, they don't. No, now you talked, Leah, about machines, you talked about your grandma, and you talked about your grandpa. And your grandpa said to you, and I quote, this is such a grandpa thing. He said, "Baby, you're only as good as your tools." And so you learned early that having great equipment will make all the difference in the world. What should beginning sewists look for in the different tools they use?
Exactly. And I'm so thankful for that phrase that he told me a long time ago. And it sticks with me to this day anytime I'm looking to do something or teach myself something. I'm always thinking, okay, what is the best tool to use for this? There's so many different tools out there, but it's so easy to get the wrong one, and it's so easy to get one that wouldn't do the job of a better tool. And I always think, if I'm going to buy a tool, like my grandfather said, you're only as good as your tools. You're looking for a specific look, a specific well done job. You have to buy the right tools. And it's so worth spending the extra and getting the right thing that is going to last you through your duration of designing or whatever you're doing. If you end up going with something on the cheaper end, you're going to get cheaper results,
Hmm.
um, as far as the way the stitches turn out or the garments are sewn together, as far as coming apart, the stitches not being tight enough. I remember when I very first started sewing, I bought a very, very cheap sewing machine because I was just starting out. This was after the fact of sewing at a very young age. I got married and started having kids. And when I had my first girl, um, I decided to pick up sewing heavy again in designing clothing and stuff like that for my little girl.
Hmm.
And I knew it was time for me to go get a sewing machine, but do I do I get a more expensive one or do I get a cheaper one to start out? Well, I went with the cheaper one to start out, due to what I could afford at the time.
Hmm.
But it just wasn't. I sewed on it and it did good for a couple of outfits. And then I was so into designing and creating clothing that I knew this machine wasn't going to be of quality to my garment. So I noticed that my top stitch was okay on a garment, but if you flipped it over, the bobbin stitch underneath looked nowhere near as pretty as the top stitch. And I remember when upgrading a machine, that was my main goal because I'm a big time perfectionist and I like everything to look tight and right, everything to look the same, to be in place, to look neat and professional. And my main goal was to look for a good machine that had a good top stitch and a good bobbin stitch.
Uh-huh.
And I set out and I searched and I searched and I sewed on machines and sewed on machines. And of course, then one of the ones I sewed on, I just fell in love with, which was the Bernina 530. And I've been a Bernina girl for about 8 years now. And, you know, once you go Bernina, you don't go back. So,
They never let you down.
no, never. And I've had the machine for 8 years. I've never had an issue with it. It still sews like butter. And my garments are top notch. Um, the stitches hold together very, very nicely. The stitches are very precise and absolute perfection. And there's nothing worse than spending all this time creating something and you're so happy to cut it out and sew it together and you can't wait to see the end results. And then you're like, oh,
Hmm.
well, these stitches don't look that great. Or I can pull the side seam and it's kind of loose. It's not, so definitely, definitely you can only be as good as your tools. And I've learned a lesson in buying several things that weren't as expensive, but it all ended up adding together being the same cost as that one expensive machine
Hmm.
that lasts you forever. So you'll end up spending more money actually on buying less of a cost tools then you would spend on buying the right tool and the right tool for the job. Um, and I'd rather go that route. I'd rather be as good as my tools and have a great tool to do the work that I need to do, and it look professional and nice and clean. And like I said, I'm a perfectionist, and that's what I expect from myself every day. And I've always said,
Hmm.
you always try to be better than you were yesterday, whether that be you better your tools, you better yourself, or both, or whatever it takes.
Great advice from your grandpa that not only helped you, but now
Mhm.
has helped our listeners. That's great. So, Vintage Little Lady is a dream come true for you. And I want you to tell us the story about how you began your business and the biggest obstacle you had to overcome.
Oh my. Yes. Vintage Little Lady has always been a dream for me. And the name actually came from me always telling my little girls when they were little and I was sewing these cute little dresses for them when I was getting all back into this garment sewing. And I'd always tell them, "You look like a vintage little lady." So, my younger one, she has a great memory, and she still has memory of me saying that. My older one, she's kinda like, "Huh, what'd you say? I don't remember."
Hmm.
But, anyway, so that's how the business name got brought about. Coming up to the business and having the dream of designing, I actually started out with sewing and pattern testing for pattern companies. And I did that for about 5 years. I pattern tested for several different companies, which pattern testing is you get sent a pattern in this small group and of wonderful ladies that are pattern testing with you as well. And you test out this company's design before it actually gets put out onto the market. You check everything, you check the tutorials, you check the fit. Then you sew a final garment and you take pretty modeled pose pictures and then you promo that for them on the day that they release their pattern to the public. So I did that for about 5 years and just really, really enjoyed that process. I leaped on every pattern test that I could possibly do, especially and mainly to help the company out. If I could help them, then I was all for that. I love to help. I love to help people in general. Um, so I started out with pattern testing. Well, as I come towards an end in pattern testing, after about the 5 years, I decided to take a leap and look into pattern designing and opening my own company. It was very, very overwhelming getting into all the classes and all the research and all the technical things that you had to learn and the programs. And of course, if anyone that knows me, they know that I'm diving in. I'm not looking back. I'm not looking to the
Hmm.
side. I'm not even thinking about it. I'm diving in and I'll deal with whatever happens after the fact.
Sure.
So that's exactly what I did. I dove in. And I love technical stuff. So I thought, I can handle this. I can do this. I'll figure it out. So I dove in and it was a lot. It was a lot. It was a lot of technical, it was a lot of time. And I'm not going to lie to you, I shed some tears over it.
Hmm.
Um, it after getting everything aligned and putting together all the research that I had found, it became very overwhelming
Hmm.
when I put it all together and it was all in front of me. And I was trying to learn this and I was trying to learn that and I was trying to learn this program at the same time that I was learning flat pattern drafting. I had ordered the Aldrich book, which is a good book for learning how to flat pattern draft. Um,
Hmm.
so I went through that book and I'm just going through all this stuff. Well, in one of the pattern testing groups that I was in, one of the testers in there had made a post and was like, "Hey, I'm going back to school. I'm going for drafting." And I had made a comment on her post and I said, "Oh, that's awesome. I'm going for drafting too. What kind of drafting are you doing?" And she was actually doing something different. It wasn't the fashion drafting, but I had made the mention of I was doing the fashion drafting. Well, one of the owners of the company had contacted me through PM and said, "Hey, I heard that you were doing some drafting. Are you doing fashion drafting?" And I said, "Yes, yes, I am." And she said, "Well, we need to talk." So then we got in a conversation and she talked and she offered me a position on the team as a designer. And I was so excited that I took the job, but I didn't even know probably half of what I needed to because I was still.
But you jumped right in.
I did. I said, "Forget it. I'm diving in. I'll find a life jacket later." So I totally dove in and shed more tears in the beginning of learning their process because I was halfway through learning the process of self teaching myself that it was totally flip flopping and learning a new thing, doing it their way, and but it was great. And I started out with them, and I was on my way. I learned a lot of things from a lot of people. Um, and it was a very fun process. And then I knew it was the time that I needed to follow my dream and pick back on my dream. And to me, a dream is written down with a date, it becomes a goal. It's
Mhm.
broken down into steps, which becomes a plan. It's backed up by action, which becomes a reality. And the action for me is diving in. So, at the end of the day, anybody can make their dream a reality, but it is going to take a plan. It is going to take a goal and it is going to take action. And all those things are done by the dreamer. Nobody else can do those things for you. So it just has to be a thought, plan, goal, reality. There's your dream coming true and
Sure.
put it in action. And that's what I did when I created Vintage Little Lady. And we've had so much fun since it's been up. We've been up for over 2 years now, and I've got several designers for my company as well that are absolutely fabulous. And I love working with all of the ladies that work with VLL, and our tester team is absolutely amazing. I love all them too, and it's just fun. We have fun, and that's my goal is to have fun and be inspired to be inspired.
That slides right into the fact that you very openly and strongly encourage young girls to follow their dreams. And you said, their dreams can come true. All they have to do is stick with it. I like what you're saying about, a dream, then you put a date on it and becomes a goal because you can dream forever. But to your point, you said only you can make it happen. And I think those are really good words of advice for young girls or anybody who have dreams.
Yes, absolutely. And I encourage everybody out there who has dreams, please just dive in. It will be okay. You will figure it out when as the things come. You can't sit on the sidelines and think about it and hope about it and well maybe one day. No, it's now. It is now or never. You dive in, you go for it, and whatever happens, happens. You'll figure it out along the way.
And if they're struggling or need encouragement, they can always reach out to you.
Absolutely. I'm always here and I love to help. I've always been told I should have been a psychiatrist. Girl, because in anything, not just sewing, like I encourage anybody and with anything that they do, whether it's sports or starting a company, or you can do this. You've got this.
To your point, only you can make your dreams happen. And I think if anyone takes a couple pieces of memorable things from this podcast, that's certainly one of them. Now, when you and I were preparing for this, you kind of took me through the top level of creating patterns, and It's complicated and very detailed, which is perfect for you. But can you take us through this process? It's fascinating, and I'm not sure everybody understands everything that goes into creating a pattern.
Right. Yes, and, creating a pattern is it when you don't know the concept of creating a pattern, it may not seem like a big thing, because they're just, you're not interested in it and you just don't think about the whole process. But pattern creating is a very large process. It's very timely. It takes a lot of hours put in as far as designing, drafting, fit checking, going back and drafting, fit checking again, going back and drafting again, fit checking again, especially if you're a perfectionist, and I'm such a perfectionist that I get on my own nerves sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, would you stop? But I can't help it. Everything has to be perfect. And I'm not okay if it's not. And I can't sleep if it's not perfect. I'll think about it and think about it and think about it. But as far as designing, we carefully look at putting detail and designs on certain things that we want to do. A lot of them are drawn up in our head. Some of them are partially inspired by things that we see that's trending, and then we add our own flair to it to make it completely different. Once we have that process down and we know that, okay, this is it, this is the design that I'm going for, this is what I'm going to do, then we have to sit and stare at that design and break it apart. Just all from a sketch on a piece of paper. We draw it out, we sketch it, all the elements out. Sometimes we draw our pattern pieces out next to it, thinking, okay, this is how we design this. This is how we're going to cut this out. This is how we're going to put this together. It's a large thinking process. Um, Once you've chosen your design, then you're trying to work the pattern shapes in your head
Hmm.
to be able to create this endpoint, this picture. So it ends up being lots of pattern pieces. We draft those out. Then we have to carefully shape and curve in certain places to get it to fit the body right. And when we think we've got our pieces pretty much there, then we have to print out all of our drafts. We have to put them together. We have to use yards and yards and yards of fabric to cut out samples, and then we try it on our fit model. We analyze it, we pin it here, we look here, we're like, okay, we need to take some off here, we need to shorten this there. We do all that. We go back to our drafts, we redraft, fix all those places that we noticed needed to be fixed. Then we print out again, and then we cut out more fabric and more fit checks, and we apply them again to the model. Okay, we fixed all those areas. Those are good, but now I'm seeing this. I need to go back and I need to tweak this. I need to make it a little bit more angled here to because we love tailored designs. We're all about a tailored fit. Um,
Hmm. That's kind of a signature look for you.
right. So then we go back the third time and we redraft the lines again. And then we finally get our final check that is like, okay, this is perfect. It looks great. I'm good. I'm going with this. Then we have to grade in all the other sizes. And then we have to, as a designer, we also have to fit check those ourselves before we give them to our tester team. So we have to fit check a certain amount of sizes for each size range. So once we've got that one fit model perfect, then we go and take the rest of the sizes, sew those up, grab the other fit models, put it on them, and make sure everything fits in the same place as the original fit model in smaller sizes and bigger sizes. Once we've accommodated all of that and everything is great and good to go, then we're down to taking step by step photos of every little step on how to put this garment together for a tutorial. Then we pull all of our pictures in programs and resize and type on them and make everything easy for the people reading the tutorials, which, that process, it takes over 24 hours just alone, just in editing the pictures to get ready for a tutorial. And then over 24 hours again, it takes that same amount of time of adding the pictures to the tutorial, creating all the verbal instructions, adding all the little links and tips and tricks and everything to a tutorial that we need to. There's a lot of times here lately where we've been actually recording helpful videos that we put links inside our tutorials. So our customers reading the tutorials, if they come to a step that we think they may be a little bit confused on, well, we've got a link under that with a video that walks them through it. And they can click on that. And if they're visual, okay, I get it now. So then we go through all that process, and at that point we buckle everything up, tidy everything together, um, give it to our testers, and then our testers go through at least a 2-week mark of sewing these up, doing fit checks for us on every size that we're going to put out on the market. That way we get every size sewn up and checked and make sure it fits like we need it to. And we get their feedback and feedback on fit, their feedback on the tutorials. They also are very helpful with spell checking, letting us know if we've missed something, um, given us feedback on fits here and there. And so by the end of this process, the end of the 2 weeks, we've got everything that we need. And our testers have helped us out tremendously. And then they all take final photos of their garments. They promo for us. Our pattern is now ready for the public. And then we go on to sell it and promo. And then of course, our favorite part, my favorite part, is seeing all the happy little customers and the designs that we've created that we were able to share our designs and our visions with all these people and sewists that love to sew. And it's so rewarding being able to see their post and read their post and how happy and excited and so proud of themselves that they are sewing what they did and creating what they did and put in certain their own touch on it and their details, and then seeing their little models with the biggest smile on their face. And a lot of them are in twirl action and running or just a big smile, any of that. That to me, that is the most rewarding part as the company owner and designer, is knowing how happy these sewists are that they've created something so nice and so awesome, and they were able to put their own flair on it, and then they were also able to make their models happy as well. And seeing that just makes all the countless hours and work that we put into this, it makes it all worth it.
Now you say countless hours. So on average, from an idea in your head to be to the point where you're marketing this to the public, how long does that take?
About 6 to 8 weeks.
And that's for one pattern.
Yes, that is for one
Mm-hmm.
pattern, and it is 6 to 8 weeks, and it sometimes it even runs through 2 a.m. in the morning that we're up and working on this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we get up at the crack of dawn, and we start cracking, and we start working, and there's a lot of nights that, we don't stop until 2 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's every day. Literally, if we are in design and we're designing a pattern, it is 6 to 8 weeks, but it is every day, all day long.
Mm-hmm.
So it is countless hours that we're working. And it is a lot of back and forth. It is a lot of trial and error. And that's really, what sewing's all about, is trial and error, trying it out, seeing if it works. If it doesn't, change it, see where you need to change it here, change it there, try it out again. If it works, great, perfect, you've done it. But there is no written book on, hey, you have to do this way to make this way. It's all about customizing and
Mm-hmm.
and trial and error, figuring it out on your own. Self-taught is the best way to learn. If you can teach yourself, that is the best way to learn.
So let's talk about trial and error. Now you are an admitted perfectionist who undoubtedly loves
Yes.
what you do because you lose track of time. But and you know you said as long as you try and be better than you were yesterday, you're going to succeed and you're going to continue to climb. Um, and that there's no wrong way of doing things. But this is what's interesting. You say the most important thing in sewing is to learn when to walk away. What do you mean by that?
Oh my goodness, yes. Sewing can be Sewing can be very frustrating at times, especially when you've got countless hours into something and you're so tired, and then you become defeated and frustrated because you've tried this and you've tried that and you've done this and you've done that and nothing is working. But I am the type of person, I refuse to give up. I'm not giving up. I don't care what it takes. If there is always when there's a will, there's a way.
Hmm.
And I'm not giving up. I'm doing this. I will figure it out. But that's the point that you need to learn to walk away, is when you're frustrated and you feel defeated and you feel like that it's not going to happen. It will happen. You just need a breather. You need to walk away. You need to take a break. You need to clear your mind. I like to grab my dog, and I like to go on a run or a walk in the neighborhood, and when I come back, my mind's clear. I can think better. I'm no longer frustrated, because feeling frustrated, emotions like that can really take over. So
Hmm.
if you give yourself the chance to free yourself of emotions like that, you'll get it. You just got to hang in there. But everybody needs to know when to step away, and it's at those frustrating moments where you get upset and it's things just aren't going your way. Well, they're just not going your way at that moment. They will go your way once you have a clear mind. So it's always good to step away, and it works every time. Every time I step away, I free my mind, I come back, and then a light bulb goes off and I'm like, oh, I could try this. I try it and I'm like,
Sure.
hallelujah, I got it. I got it. I've done it. So, that's very, very important with sewing, because you have to have a lot of patience to sew, and there are people that sew that don't have patience, because gosh, I'm willing to admit I used to be one of the most impatient people. And everybody, like all my friends and family, they were just shocked how much I love to sew and design, because everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, you have to have patience to sew, and you're like the most impatient person." I know. But it's really weird, because when I was younger, I was quite a bit impatient, and of course I've been sewing for a long time. But it's really weird. Sewing gave me patience, and the more I sew, the more patience I accumulate. And, as I've gotten older, I've gotten a whole lot more patient, but sewing takes patience, especially in those low moments where you're feeling frustrated, you're feeling defeated. So, it doesn't mean you can't get there. It just means you need to breathe and take a break, walk away, come back when you're free minded, and you can do it.
Leah, what's next for you? What's your dream for the future?
My dream for the future is to continue Vintage Little Lady, continue working with all these wonderful ladies that help us out with the company, continue to come out with different detailed designs that nobody has. Um, and as far as that, I mean, that's my goal for the future, is to continue to have a successful company, continue to make people happy, continue to inspire others, and for us to be inspired as well. And unfortunately, my girls are getting older. They are 15 and 12 now. They are officially in that teenage stage. And anybody knows that
Yes.
has teenagers, they want to shop in the stores. They're like, "Oh, I don't want you to sew for me." And I'm like, "But you don't understand. Yeah, all the do you know how customizable these things can be and how much people pay to have their own designers?"
Sure.
But,
They
they're young, and I'm sure once they get, in their over in their 20s, they'll come back and be like, "Oh, hey, remember when you said that?"
they'll come back around.
Yeah, for people to have their own designers. "Hey, will you be my designer?" But, I mean, I've got, 2 little nieces, on my side that are, 2 and 7, and then I also have a little niece on my husband's side that is 10, and, I do have them to continue to sew for, which is fun too. So, I can bring them into the mix, but hey, we do accessories, and I'm really getting heavy into women's designs
Mhm.
because my girls are getting older and they do like that more sophisticated, mature look of women's clothing. So it's not over for me yet. I'm still in the game. I'm still in the water at this point. I don't need a life vest yet.
And by the time the nieces are too old to appreciate, your own girls will be back around. So
Exactly.
it's exciting.
It is.
So we've talked about so much today, but I want to ask you this. Is there a question I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
I don't think so. I I think we've covered everything that I don't think so.
Well, I know that our listeners are going to want to reach out to you because this has been a wonderful conversation. And thank you for sharing your stories with us today.
Absolutely.
When our listeners want to reach out to you for pattern advice or that encouraging word or to share their stories with you, what's the best way for them to find you?
They can actually go to our website at vintagelittlelady.com and head to the contact tab, and they could contact us through submission of contact and fill out the form with whatever questions they have. It takes about 48 hours for a response, and if it's after 3 p.m. on Friday, we'll get back to them the following Monday. But we check our email all the time, and we are 100% happy to help anybody that we can wherever we can.
And I'm sure you would certainly welcome people's stories of their own adventures as well.
Oh, absolutely. We love hearing everybody's stories. We love hearing their plans, their dreams, their goals, their inspirations. It's all inspiring.
Leah, this has been wonderful today. Thank you again so very much for joining us on So and So.
You are very welcome, and thank you so much, Meg, for having me.
Absolutely. Well, there you have it. Another story about someone just like you, someone for whom sewing is so much more than a hobby. It's a way of life and a connection to something much bigger. If you know someone you think has an outstanding story, a story that should be shared on this podcast, please drop me a note to info@soandsopodcast.com or complete the form on our website. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast on your favorite platform and visit our website, soandsopodcast.com, for more information about today's and all of our guests. That's SEWANDSO podcast.com. And finally, I want to thank Bernina for making this program possible. I'm Meg Goodman, and I look forward to you joining us next time on So and So.